good afternoon. It's just turned afternoon. Good afternoon, Mohit. How are you?
I'm great, Natalie. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's as I talked to you a little bit before we went live. I'm really inspired by your journey. From international student, taking on the challenge of reading 100 books, and educating everyone about what you've learned, and the love of reading and writing, which is often difficult for people. Learning English and using English outside of their native language. So I'm very interested to hear about your journey. So thank you very much for joining us.
And thank you for the opportunity. So I actually hail from Mumbai in India.
Hmm.
I actually have a bachelor's in computer science. I worked for 3 years in the IT industry in India,
Yeah.
and then I looked at my peers who were like 5 or 10 years ahead of me, and I said that I do not want to do this in the future.
Yeah.
And so, like my parents are sports people. They both played basketball for a long time, and then I've been passionate about sport all my life. So I was like, let's do something in sport.
Yeah.
And I looked at countries that I can move to so that I can learn, study, and work in the sport industry. And then after a lot of research, I decided let's go to Australia. So I came to Deakin University in Melbourne, did my sports management, graduated during peak COVID, and that
Yeah.
is when I actually worked as a cleaner for 6 months.
Mm.
And so initially, when I was working as a cleaner, I actually dreaded every day of cleaning. But then I literally went home one day and I Googled what to do when your passion is not working for you. So that's the time I came across the word called purpose. That if you have a purpose in life, that is much better than being passionate about things. And I read a couple of books, Start With Why by Simon Sinek and Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. So when I read about Viktor Frankl, he was actually a survivor of the concentration camps in
Yeah.
Poland.
Yeah.
And so there was this quote from the book that which said that when you are no longer able to change the situation, you're challenged to change yourself. And then I was like, I guess if Viktor Frankl can survive the concentration camps
Yeah.
and come out alive on the other side and write a book on what he went through, I can surely go through this COVID phase that we are in right now in Melbourne. So that year, I just read like 4 or 5 books. But then, as soon as I interviewed for jobs, once lockdowns were lifted, I saw this sort of clarity, this sort of a different person talking. And I'm like, wait a minute, where are these words actually coming from? And then I realized that it was like a consolidation of all the books that I've read. And that was like my interview was actually the stage that I did not know that I actually wanted to articulate my thoughts. And
Yeah.
I did land that job, and they were like pretty impressed. And I was like, oh, it's just because I was reading books. So that's my journey
Wow.
in
Okay.
reading.
So let me just take a bit of a, just in case anyone doesn't know. You came to Australia 6 years ago,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And was it sports science that you studied at university, Deakin University? You said.
So I studied sports management at Deakin University.
Yeah.
Yes,
Perfect. And then during COVID, you started reading books.
yes.
And I found Mohit on LinkedIn, and he is now a LinkedIn top voice, which is pretty exciting in 2023. That's the thing that people want to be. So well done for that. And you have challenged yourself to read 100 books, right? And as you said, then it started in COVID, and when you interviewed, you realized just how articulate you'd become from reading the books. And what book number are you on now?
So I'm on book number 86 right now.
Book number 86. And how long have you been reading? Like, how long has this project been going on so far? So,
So I started this during peak COVID in Melbourne, so which was like June 2020.
yeah.
And so after reading 4 or 5 books, I was like, sorry, I was like, what if you, I was just talking to myself and I was like, what if you are able to read 100 books? And I just laughed it off.
Yeah.
But then I saw that over a period of like 2 years, I was able to read around 20 to 30 books. And I was like, this dream can become a reality. And I actually started writing for myself.
Hmm.
So I was like, I wanted to create a blog where I talk about my journey, international students,
Yeah.
migrants, and their journey in Australia.
Yeah.
And then I actually chickened out, and I was like, why should I create a blog? I don't even have any sort of credibility, so I shouldn't be talking about myself or other people. Like fast forward 3.5 years later, I was like, I have to do this, like whatever happens. So that's how I started with my first post on LinkedIn. And I was like, what should I talk about? So I was like, I can talk about books. And then slowly and steadily, I was like, oh, let's combine books with sports. Then let's combine sports with mindset, because I really love talking about mindset, mentality, psychology, these topics
Yeah.
that have to do with the human brain. And then I slowly started combining everything. I started following content creators on LinkedIn who are writers. I started following other authors on social media. I did a flush on Instagram where I unfollowed all the pages that are very sarcastic with their content, and I started following content creators who actually add value to people's life. And that is where I learned that the only way the only way to grow is to add value to people's life, and to do that for free, because before you take you need to give, and that's actually called the law of economics.
I love that. Before you take, you have to give. Love that.
Yes.
Absolutely. Um, wow, wow. So you've honestly in 3.5 years, you've really grown. How do you think you've grown? So let me start by asking you a couple of questions and go back to 6 years ago when you came to Australia as an international student. Um, I'm going to ask you about some of the challenges that you had, because there might be people watching now who face those challenges, or people watching the replay later who have the same challenges. So, what were some of the challenges that you faced? And you talked about you doing the cleaning job and dreading going to work every day. And I think we can all empathize with that. We know that horrible, horrible sinking feeling. But what other challenges did you have as an international student 6 years ago?
Um, Actually, before I came to Australia, I spoke to many other international students who were actually doing sports management at Deakin, and I got a lot of like very generic advice from people. But I saw that there were two or three people who stood out from the crowd, and they gave me advice like, as soon as you come to Australia, like probably rest for a couple of weeks, enjoy whatever is happening at
Love
university,
that. Yeah.
whatever is happening at university, and then go out and volunteer. Like
Mhm,
try to find local clubs where you can volunteer, try to find grassroots clubs where you can volunteer,
mhm.
because that is going to expose you to the sporting landscape in Australia. It's going to expose you to other people who work in sport, parents of children who come there, who might you can create a connection with them, and probably they might have something for you in the future. But don't think of it as transactional. Just keep doing it and believe in yourself, because for 2 years as an international student you can just work 20 hours a week,
Mhm,
and so the rest of the time you can like volunteer, because volunteering is not counted
mhm.
in those hours. And that is exactly what I did. So
That's
I got this.
incredible.
Yes.
That's so good, because that's what I try and tell everyone to do. And the fact that you got that advice before you come to Australia is just phenomenal. And the fact that you asked for it is really great as well.
Yes, and I've been huge. I'm always huge on finding the right mentors for you,
Mhm,
and I would say finding the right mentor is very very important. So I found two or three people that I wanted to be like maybe in 2 or 3 years, and I stayed in touch with them. I was in contact with them, and sometimes I used to not believe, or I used to not trust what are they talking about, but then I could see the results that they had, and
mhm.
I was like, okay, let's for once believe in yourself. And I got this unique advice from one of them, who said that you can have your spouse believe in you, you can have your parents believe in you, you can have your lecturers, professors believe in you, you can have your children believe in you, but if you don't believe in yourself, it does not matter at all. So that's why they were like, and all those three or four people that I was talking to, they sort of gave me the same advice, and I was like, okay, now this looks like a solution, and I should go out there. So that's what I did. I went out, I found a club where I can volunteer. And then one of the coaches actually saw me. He approached me and said that we have a vacancy for a soccer coach. You are a bit raw, but then I'm more than happy to teach you. And he turned out he became my mentor in the future, and he was actually from France, and I still stay in touch with him through LinkedIn and Gmail. And he taught me everything that was to be taught about soccer in Australia. And then later on, I actually changed my environment. And after a couple of years, I went and worked in a school because I was like, I've learned everything that I can learn about a small club. Now let's learn about schools, and that gave me like a very broad perspective of what the Australian sporting landscape is all
Yeah.
about, and it gave me a huge advantage when I was applying for jobs because I can you can say something, but if you're not enthusiastic and genuine and authentic about it, employers are going to like read through you, like because it's very transparent. You might say something, but your non-verbal communication is so important, right? But if you've lived that, it is so experienced, it is so easy to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you've kind of just said what I try and teach my clients in a really beautiful example of your story. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's perfect. So you came straight to Australia and you got the experience and you really enjoyed it as well. It sounds like you got really great benefits from it personally as well as professionally. Do you think that did it make you build your confidence and feel more knowledgeable and empowered about your journey in Australia?
Yes, I would say that is probably a 2 hour conversation that we can have sometime later. So I've always been amused by the English language, and right from childhood, I made sure that I learned English. And even my parents were big on me learning English. So in general, I was very fascinated by
Yeah.
Hollywood and all other aspects associated with Hollywood. So when I came here, I saw that, oh, everybody's talking in English. This is fantastic. So after a week in Melbourne, I just called up my parents and I said that I don't think so. I'll be coming back. I think so. I see a future here and I want to live here. And that was like really fast and it was not even impulsive. I just could feel that this is where I want to be for the rest of my life. And I don't think so. I have any words to explain why I did that. But then and it is still true today also that I want to live here. Yes.
That's really someone, Basil. I don't know if you can see that, but Basil says, "Great to see you, Mohit."
Hi, Basil.
If you have any questions, by the way, obviously just ask, and you will answer them. I'm sure. We're going to start. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions about you, but then we're going to start talking about the books and the reading and the writing and what you've learned about that. But a, a lot of people, a lot of international students that I talk to, and even people who I've interviewed as well, who've been here for a long time, they said the opposite. They said when they first came here, they wanted to go home. They felt like it wasn't for them. It was too scary, the English language. They felt alone. They felt isolated. Do you think that your knowledge and what you did to get community connection and do the volunteer work made that difference? Do you think that's part of the reason that you felt more settled here, or not?
Maybe,
Yeah.
but I would say that before that, I knew exactly what I didn't want to do in life. And that really
Yeah.
helped me because I worked for a while in India and I was like, I don't want to do this all my life. So when I came to Australia, some part of me maybe accepted everything, the
Yeah.
culture shock that you have to go through,
Yeah.
the rejections that you have to go through,
Yeah.
uh, those those subtle those subtle biases that you have to go through because people probably do not have all that information or knowledge about where you come from. I just accepted all of that, but I did tell myself that if there's something that needs to be changed, it needs to start from myself. And I would say the combination of all of these things actually comes in the way I write about things. And maybe I've never articulated this or thought about this question, but this is how I would answer it. Yes.
Mhm. Perfect. So what you said at the beginning of this interview about mindset, because you're really interested in mindset and the human brain, that was really very obvious from the answer to your question there. I think, you've worked a lot on your mindset. So, what advice would you give to someone who might be an international student or a new migrant who might be struggling with that type of, I don't want to say negative mindset because it's not negative, it's just challenging mindset. What advice would you give them about the mindset and what they can do?
So whatever I've learned about mindset is I've learned it through classic books because I read books that are written. Let's say there's a book written in 2017, And if you look at the references, they would refer a book that was written like 100 or 200 years ago. So as I kept reading, like when I reached book number 40 or 50, I was like, why am I reading these new books when I can actually read the classics and learn more from them? So there's this book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. In that, he says that conduct yourself as if you're already in possession of the object that you desire. So conduct yourself as if you're already in possession of the object that you desire.
Yeah.
And that's what I usually tell people, that think as if you already have it.
Yeah.
Let's say you're going for a job interview, right?
Yeah.
If you go there and you think that this is a place where I sell myself, you are probably going to fail and you're going to get very nervous about that situation. But if you think as if you already have the job, what would you change in that organization? So you read their vision statement, you read their mission, you read their strategic goals, and then you try to find gaps in those, and you say that, okay, this looks like a challenge for our organization, and this is how I would try to solve that problem and give you a solution, because now you're thinking as if you're already a part of that organization. So that's why I say that mindset, everything is a mindset. Being an international student is a mindset. Being a migrant is a mindset. A job interview is a mindset.
Yeah.
And so I also read a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He wrote that like 2000 years ago. In that, he says that kindness is invincible, only if you do not pretend about it. So a combination of all of these things, like the more I read, the more I understand that the less I know. Like I know very
Yeah.
little about the world, and there is like so much more to read, and that is why mindset is so important. And one more thing is self-talk. Self-talk is very, very big, because if you do not define your self-worth, someone else will define it for you. Let's say Natalie comes to me one day and she says that, hey Mohit, you applied for this job, you'll probably not get it. So I go home and I withdraw my application. It's because I have not defined what my worth is, right? But let's say that I've defined my worth. I tell myself every day that I'm confident, I'm a leader, I'm absolutely sure that I'm going to get the job that I'm going to apply for. And then you come to me and say that I don't think so, you're going to get this job that you've applied for. You'd be like, okay, I'm listening to you, but this is not a fact. This is just your opinion, and I decide to discard it. I'm going to go ahead with that application. So that's how mindset for me works.
Wow, that's so powerful. I feel like I've just had a lesson in mindset for myself from you there. That's amazing. So, okay, so that's a really good lead into the books. So, you've learned all of that from books, right? Have you
Yes,
learned
yes,
all of that from books?
all of that.
Where do I go with questions here? Right. Okay, so let's talk about, like, you've talked about mindset there. So, what is I don't know, could you define your biggest lesson from a book, or would you have to say your biggest 2 or 3 lessons? Do you think it would be possible to say your biggest?
Yes, I can probably give you like 2 or 3 lessons that
Yeah.
I learned
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
books. So number one, I would say, is about creativity. I
Yeah.
learned about creativity from books because I've read in books that humans are born to be creative.
Mhm.
If you look at agriculture is 10,000 years old. But if you look at cave paintings, they're 50,000 years old.
Yeah.
So before we decided that we had to grow food, we thought that drawing on walls was more important.
Yeah.
So that's why creativity is so important. You have to find something that you are creative at and continue doing it all your life.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will get bored very easily with life in general. And
Absolutely.
yes, and I would say that if you like something, like let's say you're passionate about something, don't be a weekend warrior. Don't tell yourself that I will do it only when I have time. Do it irrespective, because when I talk to people, they tell me that I'm too busy, I do not have
Yeah.
time.
No.
So
Yeah.
I just tell them that, okay, if you can just tell me what your average day looks like, I will try to find 2 hours in your average day and show you that you do have time. So we have the mornings and we have the time after work, right? So usually when we come after work, we announce it to ourselves and to everyone around us that, oh, I'm tired, I am done for the day. So I tell people that just stop saying that, because as soon as you say that, your subconscious mind is listening to what you're talking about, and then it just accepts it that, okay, now is the time for me to watch Netflix, now is the
Yeah.
time for me to watch a movie. So just stop announcing or labeling yourself as tired or busy. Those are just, and it's not a legal requirement. There is nowhere in the constitution that it's written that when you come home, you will be tired or you will be stressed. That would be my number two. And number three would be, I read this great example in the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He says that be a boxer than a gladiator, because when you're a gladiator, you depend on your sword, you depend on something else, a club, to fight. But as soon if you're a boxer, you just need to close your fists and you're ready to fight. So he says that think of a sword or think of whatever you have to fight as an external circumstance,
Yeah,
and think of your fists as your mindset.
yeah,
So if you're a boxer, you can just use your mindset to fight whatever is thrown at you. But if you're a gladiator, you will be waiting for external circumstances. You'll be like, oh, my sword is not sharp enough, or I don't have the right weapon to fight you. I know it's a very deep example,
yeah.
but
Can
that's how it is.
you so can you explain that again in kind of simplistic terms, just for anyone
Yes.
watching, including me, who might need a little bit more clarity around that example?
So yes, so I just state a quote. It does not matter what happens to you. It only what matters is how you respond to the situation.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah,
So
that's great.
that's a summary of that example.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that makes so much sense. You amazing. So what are you currently reading?
So I'm actually reading a book called The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. So
Hmm.
before Napoleon Hill became famous for his book Think and Grow Rich, he actually wrote a book called The Law of Success, which was a 600-page book.
Hmm.
He interviewed around 10,000 successful people at that time, and
Yeah,
then he wrote that book. And then people said that, oh, this book is too big, we don't want to read it. And then after 5 or 6 years, he wrote Think and Grow Rich, which went on to become the best-selling nonfiction book of all time.
yeah, wow. And let's talk about your skills. So there might be people watching this or watching the replay who would really like to read more in English. And I know that many of my students do, but they see it as too hard, right? When you began this, would you say that your reading skills and your writing skills were the same, or have you developed them over the past 3 years?
Surely I have developed them, and I still feel that my work is not done, because whenever I rarely read what I've written. That is what I do. Because sometimes when I read it, I feel like this is what is this cringy thing I've written? Why
Yeah,
is it
I
so?
like that.
It feels so embarrassing that I can't believe that I've written it. But that is what public validation is all about, right? Like you have to put yourself out there, and
Yeah,
you will learn more through public validation than you will ever learn just by sitting with yourself in a closed room and just typing like Ernest Hemingway, like what Ernest Hemingway did in the past. You have to put yourself out there, and this is the information age. This is not the industrial age. This is
yeah,
the
yeah,
information age, and that is why you have to go out there and show what you're all about. And then that doesn't mean that be very authoritative or dominating over people. It just means that you don't tell people what needs to be done. You just show them
yeah,
through your actions.
yeah. A little bit like a personal brand, right?
Yes, like a personal brand.
Mindset.
I didn't even know that word existed. I just started writing on LinkedIn, and people messaged me and said that, "Oh, your personal brand is pretty
Yeah,
unique." I'm like, "What's personal brand?" And then I
yeah,
went and searched for it.
yeah. Look, I don't really like the concept because you're doing it because it's a passion for you, but
Yes,
that is what it would be called. If you are a job seeker or if you are trying to develop your career in Australia, doing what Mohit does, just like putting your work out there about a topic that you're passionate about, yeah, it could be absolutely mind blowing and so great for your career. But I would like to ask you about tips. So let's talk about reading and writing tips for people in English. What strategies or advice would you give someone? Let's talk about reading first. What reading strategies would you give someone who would want to read maybe a few books? Maybe let's just start with 4 or 5 books and not 100, but like he would want to
yes.
read more in English. What advice could you give them?
Number one would be choose the smallest book that you can find. Like there's a book called Who Moved My Cheese. That's like I guess a 30 or 35-page book. Then there's a book called Go Giver, and that's like I guess a hundred page book. So start your reading journey So if English isn't your first language, make it easy for yourself.
Mhm.
Skim through a book or just have a look at. So Google Books gives you a lot of samples.
Yeah,
Just go through the book and see if that English suits you. Try to make it very easy for yourself and become very comfortable with the book. And initially, don't focus on comprehension. Just try to develop a reading habit, because once you develop a habit, comprehension is like a byproduct of developing that habit. And number two would be that you set a time goal for yourself rather than a page goal, because the difficulty of every book is very different. So
yeah,
if you tell yourself that every day I'm going to read 10 pages, 10 pages of book A is going to be very different to 10 pages of book B. Rather tell yourself that I would read like for 20 minutes every day, irrespective of whatever happens. And there's a book called Atomic Habits. In that, he says
mhm,
that make it very specific. Tell yourself, like, write it and put it on a wall and say that I will eat my breakfast at 8 a.m. I will finish my breakfast at 8:15 a.m. So from 8:15 a.m. to 9 a.m. I will read every day for 45 minutes, irrespective of what happens. And at 9 a.m. I will leave for work. So
yeah,
be very specific. So he says that sandwich your habits between two other tasks. So you know that what I'm doing before and what I'm doing after is predictable. So
yeah,
this 45 minutes, I have to sit down and read whatever may happen in my life. And number three would be about the question you asked me earlier, is that use a pen or
yeah,
your finger when you're reading. Just keep it below the line, because we still have the survival instinct that our ancestors had like many years ago. So as soon as we hear a sound or we see something in our peripheral, we are very easily distracted. So when you have your finger or your visual pacer, you tell your eyes that, hey eyes, I want you to look here while I'm reading and not be distracted by other things. And that's how blind people also read, right? Like they do not have hand-eye coordination, but they still use their hands, and it's called braille, right?
yeah.
They use their hands to read books, and we should be doing that too. And I would say number four would be that purchase a good pair of headphones if you like to listen to music.
Mhm,
And but the music needs to be instrumental without any lyrics.
mhm,
And if I'm not wrong, it needs to be between 30 hertz to 60 hertz if you're listening to music. So I usually use music between breaks. Like I will read for 25 minutes, and then 5 minutes I usually put on my headphones and then remove it again
yeah.
while I'm reading. Like I don't stop reading. I do it with the reading. So these are some few tips that I can give about reading.
Perfect. And what about writing as well?
So I would say with writing, I'm still very raw. For me, reading is an obsession. So I will go to any lengths to find out how I can be a better reader. But writing is like a hobby. So
Yeah,
I purchased three books on writing. Um, so the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Number two is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Everybody knows her for her book Eat, Pray, and Love.
yeah.
But then this Big Magic is fantastic for
Oh,
creativity.
okay. Okay, yeah.
And number three is I've been following a content creator called Nicholas Cole for a long time. So I purchased his book. So that's what I tell people, is that if you like something, try to consume that person's information through various sources like podcast, videos, books.
Yeah,
And that's how I do with most of the books that I read. I try to follow the author on social media. So I'm getting the information that they are giving through various different sources, and that makes you a better learner. So as far as writing is concerned, um, I would say that first learn to write for yourself, at least for a couple of months. Like make sure that try to write about your day. Like it can be anything, that today in the morning it was 18 degrees, but since I live in Melbourne, it became 32 degrees in the afternoon.
yeah,
You can write, you can write anything. And when you write anything, you will see that you have ideas.
yeah,
So the biggest thing about humans is that because of social media, we've stopped being bored. Whenever we are bored, that is when we get our ideas. So that's why going on walks is very important without any digital devices.
yeah,
Sitting in a room and meditating is very important, because you have to be bored for you to get those great ideas. So
yeah,
as far as writing is concerned, I would just say that write for yourself before you decide to write for others, and follow the right people. If you want to become like someone, try to follow that person and copy until you become an original.
wow. I have to say, I feel like you're like a knowledge sponge. Like, I just feel like you've got so many really intelligent and really inspiring, pieces of information, advice, thoughts coming out of your mouth. And I assume that's from the books that you've read. Like you've really soaked up all of the knowledge and all of the characters and all of the, information from the books. And it's kind of, did your head feel full, or do you feel like your brain just expands every book that you read?
I actually feel the opposite. I'm like, I just have like this short life, finite life that I have, and there are so many books that I still haven't read. Sometimes when I'm reading a book, I feel like, oh, when I'm going to finish this book, because there are like 100 other books on my bookshelf that I need to complete, and I
Yeah,
don't know. You do not know how long you're going to live, right? So maybe
absolutely.
that is one FOMO that I always have, and
Yeah,
that's through books I learned the value of service and providing information for free, because that was one thing I lacked as an international student, was that whenever I tried to find someone who could offer me help, they usually had a price on it, and that's why I decided that I'm going to like do it for free. I'm going to volunteer my time. But
yeah,
yes, when you require like specific knowledge or specific information, you should ask people for the right advice or right expertise. And even if let's say that they ask you for X amount of dollars, and you feel that they will add value to your life, you should give it, because they are an expertise in that area. So
yeah.
for example, I do not like resumes and cover letters, but I love interviews. So
Hmm.
um, actually went through a paid service so that they could help me with my resume and cover letter.
Hmm.
And that's I created some headspace for interviews, because now I did not need
Yeah,
to worry about resumes and cover letters. I could focus 100% on the interviews. And understanding yourself is very, very important about whenever you're reading or writing,
hmm,
because I've seen a lot of people that I meet. Some of them are really outgoing, some of them are very extroverted, and some of them are like introverted and are very reserved with whatever they do. And
yeah,
that's what I tell people, that find out what your strengths are,
yeah,
and use those strengths in any given situation, because there are many people that I meet. So I tell them that, oh, even I'm an introvert. I do not party a lot. I do not go out a lot, but I love playing sport, and that's how I made all my friends. And I
yeah,
have these 5 or 10. I have a group of 5 or 10 friends that I'm ready to spend the rest of my life with, and that is how introverted I am. And they tell me that, oh, even it doesn't look as if you're introverted, but we are shy. So I tell them that shy is actually not a personality trait. It is something that you've been conditioned all your life, and someone has told you that, because we are not born shy, right? Like as soon as we are born, we are not declared that this is a shy person. This person is going to be shy all their life.
yeah,
It's a tag. It's a label that we give ourselves. So that's why I say that I tell people that stop saying those negative things about yourself.
yeah,
Instead, so Napoleon Hill calls this auto suggestion. Just tell yourself positive adjectives every day.
yeah. I love that. Amazing. I'm a bit blown away by you. You've got so much amazing knowledge. I have one final question, and it's going back to the beginning of the interview where we were talking about you and your situation, like you coming to Australia 6 years ago, and you said, find your purpose,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And you found your purpose, I think, sports, education, helping people. Some people might have a different purpose to that, but they might not know what it is yet. Can you provide anyone listening with advice on finding their purpose?
100%. It is one of the most difficult things to do in your life. And some people find it in like 2 days. And for some people, it takes 20 years and still they're
Mhm.
not able to find their purpose. But that's why it's so important to read. It is important to listen to other successful people, because
Yeah,
it is through those people that something might click one day and you might say that, hey, I want to do exactly what this person is doing, but I will do it my way.
yeah,
There you go, you found your purpose. And that's why it's important to consume information, and you can do it through podcasts, you can do it through audiobooks, you can do it through YouTube. I
yeah,
usually do it through books. So as soon as you have a thought or idea, like
yeah, yeah,
write it down and go out there and apply it, like verify it. If it doesn't work for you, come back and say that, okay, this thought doesn't work for me, and just scratch that out. Let's go to the next thought that I have, let's go to the next idea that I have, let's go out there and verify it. Maybe this worked for you and it worked like 70%, so let's come back and redefine it. Let's like change that sentence and go out there and apply it again. It is only through application that you will ever be able to find your purpose. Because the things that I'm doing, like reading, writing, and talking to people in my free time, if I just I just have that in my head and I don't go out there and talk to people or
Yeah.
apply it, or I don't write on LinkedIn, I would have never found my like purpose. And writing is that's why it's so important. Like writing about yourself at least once a week. Find some time, like 20 minutes, to probably on a Saturday or Sunday, and just write down what you're feeling or what you're going through right now, because whatever you're feeling, whatever is emotionally current in your life is so important,
Yeah.
because that is what your identity is all going to be about during that time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Love that. Perfect. All right. That's me. Do you have anything else you want to say to anyone or yeah, is there anything else that you think I've missed? Because I feel like I could, I feel like there's a lot more questions I could ask you, but then I could go on for hours and hours and hours because I feel like you're like a little knowledge bubble, and that you've got so much more to give. So have I missed anything? Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
I would just like to say that always have a dream, because if you do not have a dream, you will never find your purpose. Because a dream is not just about being passionate about what you're interested in, but a dream is about also doing the disagreeable aspects
Yeah.
about the things that is going to take you towards your dream. Because once you are fixated on your dream, it becomes easy to develop a skill around that dream. So let's say that I want to educate migrants so that they can pursue their dreams. That's my dream. So now what are the skills required? I have to read books. I have to write on LinkedIn. Fantastic. And number three would be the pathway. Pathway would be like a process that I do every day so that I'm able to reach my dream. And I had a look at your website, and I could see that you help migrants with their communication, with their confidence, and with their employability skills, right? So a dream, a purpose needs to be something that's never ending, because it's actually the journey that is really enjoyable than the destination. So that's why you need to have a dream.
Yeah, love that. You do. You absolutely need to have a dream. And I think sometimes when you first come to Australia, because it happened to me as well, some people, they kind of lose that. They lose the sense of identity and dream and self. So I really, really hope that listening to your story and how much you've grown and learnt and how much you're giving back as well is really inspiring people because it's really inspired me. I feel like I want to listen to the replay and listen to some of the things that you said to me because I think I've learned a lot from you as well. So thank you so much, sincerely. It's been wonderful to chat to you. Really, really has.
Thank you so much for this opportunity,
No
Natalie.
problem.
Thank you.
If anyone has any questions later, just comment and or connect on LinkedIn with Mohit. He's got some incredible content, and learn about the books and what he writes about mindset and everything. Absolutely go and do that. And if you've got any questions, then I'm sure that he would be happy to help you. So yeah, thank you so much.